Happy Thursday, kings and queens. Again, it is Thursday, September 24th. We're going to jump into a brand new lesson. We're still in Unit 1. This is going to be Lesson 4a. Our classroom norms, as usual, are that your cameras are to be on, your mics are to be muted unless you are sharing out, and let's be ready to chat. So for today, your materials, you will need your Math 7 Spiral Notebook. You are writing on page 7 of your Spiral Notebook. So at the bottom of your page, just go ahead and write page 7. And at the top, we're going to date it September 24th, 2020. You will need your pencil. And at this time, you guys can go ahead and access the Student Companion in Google Classroom. And it's titled Lesson 4a. That's the Student Companion that you are looking for once again in Google Classroom. Remember, if you do not submit your Student Companion at the end of the live class, you will not get credit. So it's important that as we're doing this lesson, you're also following along on your Student Companion. Okay? Just one little update for us. After today, there will be no more live classes again until Tuesday. So you have a long weekend. Tomorrow is a professional development for staff, and Monday is a holiday. So you guys will be off until Tuesday. So you have a nice little 4-day break from now until Tuesday. Okay, let's jump right into today's lesson. So today we're going to be talking about representing proportional relationships with equations. And we're going to talk about constants once again, constants of proportionality, and things of that nature. So instead of looking at tables like we've been doing, now we're looking at proportional relationships and equations. And this is day 1 of this lesson. So again, on page 7 of our notes, let's go ahead and be ready to take notes and work collaboratively. On page 7, you are going to write down today's standard, which is 7.rp.2c, and our objectives, which you will also copy down. Students will generalize the process for finding missing values in a proportional relationship and justify orally why this can be abstracted as where is the constant of proportionality. Students will also generate an equation of the form to represent a proportional relationship in a familiar context. And you will also be able to write the constant of proportionality to complete a row in the table of a proportional relationship where the value for the first quantity is 1. Our mathematical practices for today are going to be MP6 and MP7, and that just means attend to precision and look for and make use of structures. So those are the behaviors that we're going to be expecting as we go through this lesson. Let's pause the video here so you can finish copying down the standard and the objective. All right, now let's jump into our engagement for today. Our engagement is going to be entitled Hippos and Crocodiles. So let's read the problem. It says the ratio of the number of hippos to the number of crocodiles at a watering hole is 4:3. Draw a number line diagram that would show the number of crocodiles if there were 20 hippos. So we're going to do this double number line in your notes. So let's give us some hints as we go ahead and complete this double number line. On the top, let's make the top number representative of hippos and the bottom representative of crocodiles. So once again, the top number line is going to represent hippos, the bottom number line is going to represent crocodiles. So it also gives us a ratio of 4:3. So 4 hippos for every 3 crocodiles. So if I have 0 hippos, I'm obviously going to have 0 crocodiles. My next number will be 4 hippos and 3 crocodiles at the bottom. So 4 is going to go at the top and 3 is going to go at the bottom. And I want to be able to fill in this number line all the way until I get to 20 hippos. And we're going to pause for a second for all of you guys to finish this. And once you finish this in your notes, I want you all to put in the chat, if I have 20 hippos, how many crocodiles am I going to have? So let's pause for a second while you put this into your notes and also type into the chat. Thank you so much to everybody that responded in the chat, and thank you for also putting this into your notes. So the correct answer, if I have 20 hippos, then I'm also going to have 15 crocodiles. So that was my answer for our engagement activity. Let's keep moving right along. So today's goals are as follows. The first thing that we want to be able to do by the end of this lesson is I want to be able to write the constant of proportionality as an entry in a table. So remember when we talk about constant of proportionality, that's just our unit rate. And then I also want to be able to write an equation of the form y equals kx to represent a proportional relationship described by a table or a story. So now let's write equations describing proportional relationships. So our elaboration activity is going to be called Feeding a Crowd Revisited. So we talked about this in our last activity from previous days, and we're going to kind of revisit it, okay? So we're also going to need our student companion at this time. So let's make sure that our student companion is open and that we're looking at the section that says elaboration, okay? So we're going to start this by begin working on your own for about 3 minutes, and then we're going to share out what you're thinking as a team. So we're going to look at your student companion, and in about for 3 minutes, let's go ahead and try to answer number 1, 2, and 3 on page 2 of the student companion. So on page 2 of your student companion, we're going to pause the video for about 3 minutes, and you guys are going to work on answering those questions. All right. Now that that time has wrapped up, let's take some time to go ahead and go over this, and then we'll also pause again to share as a team. So the first question asked us, a recipe says that 2 cups of dry rice will serve 6 people. Okay, so the only thing that's given to us is that we know 2 cups of dry rice serve 6 people. And it says, so let's figure out and go ahead and just fill out the table. So let's pause the video here and have somebody share out what the values in the table should be. So just to check our work, our values in the table, remember we're giving 2 cups of dry rice serves 6 people. So for 1 cup of dry rice, it's only going to serve 3 people. So the values that are going to go on the table for 1 cup of dry rice, I should have 3 people. We already know that 2 cups will serve 6 people. 3 cups of dry rice is going to serve 9 people. 12 cups of dry rice is going to serve 36 people. 43 cups of dry rice is going to serve 129 people. And then this one says if I have X cups of dry rice, it's going to serve how many people? So let's take a minute to revisit this, pause the video, and share what your thoughts are. So hopefully, we're realizing that in order to figure out the number of people, I just multiply all of the numbers in this first column times 3. When I did 1 cup times 3, it let me know that I could serve 3 people. 2 cups of dry rice times 3 let me know that I can serve 6 people. And all I did was multiply this first column by the number 3. So if I don't know how many cups of dry rice I'm going to have, so once again, if I know that all I did was multiply by 3 by all of these values, if I don't know the number of dry rice cups that I have, and it's X, then all I have to do is multiply this X by 3 to figure out the number of people. So this last blank is going to be 3X. Now, the problem says to write an equation that shows the relationship in the table. So earlier we said that we're going to write the equation in the form y equals kx. Now, k is just going to represent that number or the constant of proportionality or the unit rate. And we just figured out that the unit rate was 3 because we're multiplying everything by 3, and that was my initial value. So the equation that you were coming up with should have been y equals k x, or you should have written y equals 3x. We wanted to write an equation of the form y equals kx, so the equation is going to be y equals 3x. And all I'm going to do is put in a number for x, and that'll tell me the number of people that it will serve. So this last row on the table should have been 3x, and your equation is y equals 3x. So now that we know that, let's just go ahead and check part of the second question. The second question says a recipe says that 6 spring rolls will serve 3 people. So in order to figure out my constant of proportionality or my unit rate for one spring roll, I have to figure out how can I go from 6 to 1. Well, 6 divided by 6 gives me 1. So that means that I also have to divide 3 by 6 to give me the number of people that it's going to serve. Well, 3 divided by 6 is the same thing as 1/2 or 0.5. So the number here for the number of people for one spring roll is 1/2. So that means that all I need to do is multiply every single number in this first column by 1/2. So for instance, for 10 spring rolls, if I multiply that by 1/2, it's going to serve 5 people. For 16 spring rolls, if I multiply that by 1/2, it's going to serve 8 people. Okay, because we're going to check some of these problems, let's make sure that you have a number for half of 25. And then if I have n spring rolls, if I multiply this by 1/2, just like we did in the last example, what's going to go in this column? And then now that we know what goes in this last row, let's see if we can come up with an equation for the constant of proportionality to represent the relationship in the table. Once you go back and check your work for number 2, let's make sure that you answer the question for number 3 in your own words. Let's pause the video here so that you have some time to go back and fix number 2 and also complete number 3. Great. Now let's just keep moving on. So now we're going to the second part of our elaboration activity. This is going to be on page 3 of the student companion, and this portion is going to be called Denver to Chicago. So now we're moving to page 3 of our student companion, looking at the section that says Denver to Chicago. So we know that a plane flew at a constant speed between Denver and Chicago. It took the plane 1.5 hours to fly 915 miles. So if I look at my table in the student companion, I'm giving a table, and the only thing that is given to me is that 1.5 hours it takes 915 miles. Okay, so let's go ahead, pause the video, take some time here to figure out if we can figure out the rest of the table. Now that we've had some time to kind of figure this out, which is a little bit difficult, let's see if we can go ahead and fill out this table. So again, we're gonna take a little bit more time. Let's unmute your mics, and let's share out before we go ahead and revisit our answers to see if you guys can figure this out together and what some of your strategies and tactics were, and then we'll come back and answer the questions together. So let's pause here, and you're gonna unmute your mics and share out amongst the group. So I definitely want to thank everybody that shared out and definitely gave some input on this problem. So let's go ahead and figure this out. There are multiple ways to solve this, but the easiest thing that I think would have been to do just in my own thinking, and again, multiple strategies you could have used, is that it was given to me that 1.5 equals 915 miles for the distance. So again, if I'm going backwards and I'm trying to get from 1.5 to 1, I could have divided because 1.5 divided by 1.5 gives me 1. So in order to figure out this first row, let's divide 915 by 1.5. Now, of course, we can't necessarily do this in our head, so you may have needed a calculator. But if I did that for 1 hour, it was going to take for 1 hour, I could complete 610 miles. So again, this first blank is 610. And I got that by dividing 915 by 1.5. So that means that I can do the last column. It says that we want to write this in miles per hour. I would have written 610 miles per hour. So once again, 610 miles per hour. If I were filling out this second row, it would be 915 miles per 1.5 hours. So again, all I did was because this first one was the second row was given, I divided 1.5 by 1.5 to get 1, and then 915 by 1.5 to get 610. So that means that all I need to do is go ahead and multiply in order to figure out the rest of these numbers. So now that we know that, let's pause the video here and see if we can come up with the rest of these numbers and to write an equation that relates time and distance. So thank you all for checking your work. Now, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to go ahead and check the rest of these as a part of your work, but the equation that you guys should have come up with would have been y equals 610d. Although if you use the actual variables, you could have used t equals 610d, or if you wrote it in the form y equals kx, your equation was y equals 610x. So in order to find the time, so t equals, you're going to multiply 610 by the distance. So once again, here is another word wall for all of us. Again, all of these word walls will be posted at the end of our lessons for today because this is going to help us moving forward. So if you need a reference for your vocabulary, we're going to definitely put this up in Google Classroom. So let's look at our last elaboration activity, which is going to be on page 4 of your student companion, and this one is going to be entitled Revisiting the Bread Dough Activity, which we did earlier this week. So again, it revisits the context you worked on earlier in this unit, and we're going to spend some time on your own, about 2 minutes doing this, and then we'll reconnect. So be ready to share your thinking with your classmates. So we're going to pause the video here for about 2 minutes to work on this last elaboration activity on your own. Now let's keep moving. So this was a table that was given to us once again, and it says, what was your equation for the proportional relationship? How could you use this relationship to answer number 3? Now, because we've already gone over the first 2 examples, I'm going to leave this one to you all. It's okay if you don't get this 100% right because I know this can be somewhat difficult. However, what I would like to do is pause the video here and have somebody share out what their equation was for this proportional relationship. And in the chat, I would like for the rest of your classmates to say whether or not you agree or you disagree. If somebody disagrees, please also share and unmute yourself and say what your equation was. And then as a class, after we have that discussion, let's then talk about how we could use the relationship to answer question number 3. So let's pause here have someone share out what your equation was, then your classmates will agree or disagree and share what their equations were, and then we're going to answer how this helps us answer number 3. So let's pause here. All right, so let's just go back and recap a little bit. So we examined a proportional relationship between cups of rice and people served in our first example. So let's answer these 3 questions. Let's have somebody recap. You can scroll back up to the second page of your student companion and let's answer these questions. What was the constant of proportionality in this task? Or what was the unit rate? Remember, what was that one that had per 1? Then, what did the constant of proportionality represent? And what equation did we write for this situation? So all you have to do is go back to your student companion for our first elaboration activity to answer these questions just to recap, okay? So let's pause the video here and take a second to recap what our constant of proportionality was, what the equation was, and what it represented. Now let's do the same thing for the second activity that we just talked about. We examined another proportional relationship where we knew that a plane was flying at a constant speed. Once again, what was the constant of proportionality for that one? Remember, the constant of proportionality is just that first row of the table when it tells us for the value of 1. Okay? What did it represent in this problem? And then what was the equation that we came up with? So again, we already mentioned them earlier in our lesson. Let's just go back and recap what it is that we found. Now, it's time for our final wrap up and our evaluation activity for this lesson. So it says Selena and Dylan studied the data in the table. They each wrote an equation to represent the relationship between the number of students and the number of pizzas ordered. So if you look here, Selena's equation was S equals 4P. So she said that you can find the number of students by taking 4 pizzas or for the number 4 and multiplying it by how many ever pizzas. Dylan's equation says P equals 1/4 S. So he said the number of pizzas is equal to if I take 1/4 and multiply it by the number of students. So Mr. Lewis said that both equations were correct. Now, can somebody, so in your individual, on your student companion, excuse me, you're going to sit here and tell us why both of these are correct in your own words. And I can go ahead and just explain really quickly something that might give you a hint. Let's say for Selena's equation, if I substitute in 4 pizzas for the variable p, well, 4 times 4 would give me 16, and the table does say 16 students for 4 pizzas. For Dylan's equation, S represents students. So if I do 1/4 times 16 for S, 1/4 times 16, which is the same thing as dividing 16 by 4, it will give me a total of 4 pizzas. So explain in your own words why Mr. Lewis said that both equations were correct in your student companion. Let's pause the video here as you guys type into the student companion for about 2 minutes. All right. Just to recap, thank you so much for completing that evaluation activity. Just to go back over our goals for today, we were able to write the constant of proportionality as an entry in a table. We also can write an equation of the form y equals kx. Let's pause the video here and copy down this highlighted portion where it says y equals kx. And I want you guys to write y equals kx is the equation for a constant of proportionality. Y equals kx is the equation for a constant of proportionality. I'm also going to go back to the beginning of our presentation so that you can write down something else that was really important that I wanted us to have. On our initial slide representing proportional relationships, I want us to write down y equals kx and write down this diagram that's represented in the middle. We know k is going to be our constant, and this is how we figure out our constant of proportionality. So let's go ahead and write down this middle portion as a part of our notes for today. We can pause the video here as you guys copy this down, and then we'll pick back up at the end. Great. So even though that this was may seem a little bit difficult, again, we're just laying the foundation for solving problems such as this. So let's keep moving. So if there are any questions, let's make sure that we type them into the Google Classroom post so that they can be answered if need be. So reminder that there's no more class again until Tuesday because we have a long weekend. Now, your independent activity for this week is going to, or for today, is another Mobius math assignment. All of the directions will be posted in Google Classroom, and it is due at 11:59 p.m. today. Remember, if you are not submitting your assignments, you are not getting credit. All of your grades will be updated by the end of this week. So if you have not submitted assignments, you will receive a 0. But once again, today's assignment is on Mobius Math. Again, if you are not able to log into Mobius Math, I will also put the PDF file of the problems in Google Classroom so that you can type it on a separate sheet of, or you can answer it on a separate sheet of paper and then upload a picture. Otherwise, I hope that you guys have a great rest of your day. If you have any questions for Mr. Spencer, you can hang on and then he will be able to answer them. Have a great long weekend, and we will see you all on Tuesday.